Hi, this is Paul Golaszewski from the Legislative Analyst Office. I'll be discussing in this webcast our recent report, Achieving Better Outcomes for Adult Probation. First, I'll talk a little about probation in general. Probation, as you may be aware, is often granted to criminal offenders instead of a state prison sentence. In other words, instead of sending a convicted felon to prison, a judge may decide to allow the offender to remain free in the community under certain court-imposed terms and conditions. Probation officers are responsible for monitoring individuals placed on probation and making sure that they are abiding by the terms and conditions of their probation sentence, and that they are not involved in any additional criminal activity. For example, for a convicted drug offender on probation, a probation officer might make an unannounced visit to the probationer at his or her home and administer a drug test to make sure the probationer is not using drugs. Probation officers report to the court any violations that they may find. In this example, it could be a dirty drug test. The probation officer will also make a recommendation to the judge for how to proceed with the case. For example, the probation officer could recommend that the offender remain on probation, but under more intense supervision. Or the officer could recommend that the court revoke probation and send the offender to state prison. In California, probation departments are run by the counties. In total, California counties supervise about 350,000 probationers statewide. Most of the funding for adult probation also comes from the counties. Now I'll talk a little bit about some of our findings when we examined the performance of county probation departments. We found that there was a great deal of variation in terms of how probation operated in different counties. Overall, however, we found that many probation departments were not operating according to best practices. For example, we found that many county probation departments did not effectively track their probationers' progress in rehabilitation programs, and that many departments did not have an appropriate range of alternative sanctions that could be used instead of revoking probationers to jail or prison. We also found that each probation officer typically supervises over 100 probationers, which limits their ability to effectively manage their cases. In talking with probation officials, they were aware of these shortcomings, but stressed that they did not have enough funding in order to fully operate according to the best practices. Although most of these issues involved county operations, we did find that the performance of county probation significantly affects the state. As I mentioned earlier, probationers that violate their probation sentence can be revoked and sent to state prison. We found that of all the new admissions to state prison each year, approximately 40% were offenders who had been on probation. And since it costs the state now on average about $49,000 per year to incarcerate an offender in state prison, we estimate that the state spends up to $1 billion incarcerating in state prison offenders that had originally been on probation. So, obviously the state could benefit financially if fewer probationers were revoked and sent to state prison each year. Counties, in turn, appear to need additional resources in order to be more successful with their probationers and keep them out of prison. As a result, we recommended that the state implement a new program through which both the state and county probation can benefit. Under our proposal, the state would provide financial incentives to counties to reduce the number of probationers that they send to state prison. The state would fund the program from the savings that would result to the state prison system. County probation would use the additional financial resources to implement the best practices necessary for them to be successful at reducing probation revocations. We estimate that if county probation successfully reduced the number of probationers from entering state prison by even 10%, the state would save $100 million. If 40% or $40 million of these savings went to improving probation operations, the state would achieve $60 million in net savings. And finally, providing enhanced services and supervision of probationers at the county level should also benefit public safety. This is just a brief summary of some of our findings and recommendations. You can learn more about this report on our website. Thanks for tuning into this webcast.